When I was 17, I lived in a foster home in Oakland, an old Victorian house with creaky wood floors. The house always felt like it had secrets. One chilly autumn night, I finished brushing my teeth in the bathroom on the first floor. The bathroom was right in front of the stairs that led up to the second floor where our bedrooms were. As I turned off the light and stepped out, I saw the hem of a long, white gown at the top of the stairs. "Do you want me to leave the light on?" I called out, thinking it was my foster mom or my little foster sister. There was no response. The gown just turned and disappeared down the hallway. Assuming it was my foster sister sleepwalking, I headed upstairs. She was prone to sleepwalking, being only 11 years old. I decided to check on her and my foster parents before going back to bed. I peeked into my foster parents' room first. They were both sound asleep, my foster father snoring loudly. Next, I went to our room. My foster sister was there, dead asleep in her bed. I suddenly realized that I hadn't heard any footsteps on the wooden floorboards when the figure had turned and walked away. The house was eerily silent. I quickly got into my bed, pulling the blanket over my head, trying to calm my racing heart. The house settled into its usual nighttime creaks and groans, but I couldn't shake the image of that white gown. Sleep came slowly, filled with uneasy dreams. The next morning, over breakfast, I casually asked my foster mom if anyone had been up late at night. She looked puzzled and said no. Everyone had slept through the night. I decided not to mention the figure in the gown, not wanting to sound crazy or scare my little foster sister. As time passed, I couldn't get the image out of my mind. I began to notice other strange occurrences around the house. Doors that I knew I had closed would be ajar, cold drafts in rooms with no open windows, and the feeling of being watched. My foster family didn't seem to notice anything unusual, which made me question my own sanity. One evening, while doing homework in my room, I heard a soft humming. It was a tune I didn't recognize, slow and sad. I followed the sound down the hallway to the attic door. It was slightly open, which was odd because the attic was always kept locked. Summoning my courage, I pushed the door open and climbed the narrow stairs. The humming grew louder, but as soon as I reached the top, it stopped. The attic was empty, filled with old furniture and boxes covered in dust. The only light came from a small window that cast eerie shadows across the room. Feeling a chill, I hurried back downstairs and locked the attic door behind me. That night, I dreamt of the woman in the white gown. She was standing at the foot of my bed, her face obscured by shadows, just watching me. I woke up in a cold sweat, my heart pounding. The following day, I decided to confide in my foster sister. She was young, but she had an old soul, wise beyond her years. She listened intently as I told her about the woman in the white gown and the strange happenings around the house. Her face grew pale as she whispered, "I've seen her too." My blood ran cold as she described the same gown, the same eerie presence. She told me she had seen the woman standing in the hallway at night, just staring at her with sad eyes. We decided to investigate further, determined to uncover the truth about our ghostly visitor. We started with the attic, the place where I had heard the humming. We searched through the old boxes, finding nothing but dusty photographs and forgotten trinkets. In one box, however, we found a diary. It belonged to a woman named Adeline, who had lived in the house decades before. As we read through the diary, a tragic story unfolded. Adeline had lost her husband in a tragic accident, and she had never recovered from the grief. She had taken to wearing her wedding gown around the house, unable to let go of the past. The last entry in the diary spoke of her despair and hinted at her intention to join her husband in death. We realized that Adeline had never left the house. Her spirit was trapped, reliving her sorrow over and over. With this realization, we decided to help Adeline find peace. One night, with just a single candle for light, we gathered in the dim living room. Shadows flickered on the walls, stretching into strange shapes. The air felt heavy as we sat in a circle, holding hands and softly speaking to her spirit. "We're here to help you, Adeline," I said quietly. "Your husband is waiting for you on the other side. It's time to let go and move on." As soon as I finished speaking, the temperature in the room dropped. A chill swept through, making the candle flame flicker wildly. Our breaths turned visible, and I saw my foster sister shivering beside me. Suddenly, a faint, sorrowful sound filled the room. It was like a whisper, but it carried a deep sadness that pressed down on us. The whisper grew louder, turning into a haunting melody that echoed through the house. The sense of longing and despair was overwhelming, making it hard to breathe. The candlelight wavered, casting eerie shadows on the walls. I could feel a presence moving around us, filled with grief and sorrow. The room felt alive with Adeline's pain, and I sensed her hesitation, her fear of leaving the only place she had known. We kept talking to her, our voices trembling but determined. "Adeline, it's time. You don't have to be alone anymore." The air grew colder, and the whispering stopped. For a moment, there was an intense silence, as if the house itself was holding its breath. Then, we felt a gentle warmth, like a soft breeze, brushing against our faces. The heavy feeling lifted and the candle flame steadied. The house seemed to relax, the tension fading into calm. We knew then that Adeline had finally found her peace. After that night, the strange occurrences stopped. I still think about Adeline sometimes, wondering if she found peace. Living in that house taught me that some spirits stay behind, not to cause harm, but because they need help to move on. It was a lesson in empathy and understanding that I'll carry with me always. The mist rolled in thick and heavy as I approached the ancient monastery, nestled deep in the mountains. It seemed to appear out of nowhere, its stone walls blending seamlessly with the rugged landscape. I was one of a small group of attendees who had come for a silent retreat, each seeking solace and reflection. The first evening passed quietly. Brother Michael, a solemn figure, welcomed us and explained the rules. No talking, no phones, no distractions. We were to spend the next week in complete silence, meditating and contemplating. The quiet was a stark contrast to the constant noise of my daily life, and I found a sense of peace in it. As night fell, I lay in my small, sparsely furnished room. The only sound was the soft rustle of the wind through the trees. It was in this profound silence that I first heard it, a strange chant, low and rhythmic, echoing through the halls. It was unsettling, like a distant hum that seemed to resonate deep within my bones. I tried to ignore it, convincing myself it was just my mind playing tricks after a long day of travel. The next morning, during the communal breakfast in the Great Hall, I noticed something odd. One of the attendees, a middle-aged woman named Sarah, was missing. I hadn't seen her since our arrival, but I assumed she had decided to stay in her room. The day passed in a blur of meditation and reflection, the silence heavy and comforting. Yet, as night fell again, the chant returned, more distinct and closer than before. By the third day, 2 more people were missing, an elderly man named Harold and a young woman, Julia. Their absence cast a shadow over the retreat, and I could sense a growing unease among the remaining attendees. The chant grew louder each night, a haunting melody that seemed to weave its way through the monastery, drawing us in and filling our dreams with strange visions. On the 4th night, the chant had become almost unbearable, a persistent echo that reverberated through my very being. I decided to investigate, hoping to find some logical explanation that would put my mind at ease. As I wandered the dimly lit corridors, the chant led me to a hidden staircase, one I hadn't noticed before. It spiraled downward, deeper into the bowels of the monastery. With each step, the air grew colder and the chant louder. The walls seemed to close in around me, the darkness thick and impenetrable. At the bottom of the staircase, I found a heavy wooden door, slightly ajar. Pushing it open, I entered a vast underground chamber lit by flickering candles. The sight before me took my breath away. In the center of the chamber stood Brother Michael, his eyes closed, lips moving in sync with the chant. Around him were the missing attendees, their faces pale and eyes vacant, as if in a trance. The realization struck me. The chant was not a mere sound, it was a call, a summoning. I tried to back away, but my feet felt rooted to the spot. Brother Michael's eyes snapped open, and he looked directly at me, a knowing smile playing on his lips. He raised his hand, and the chanting stopped abruptly, replaced by a deafening silence. The attendees slowly turned to face me, their expressions blank and lifeless. "Welcome," Brother Michael said, his voice echoing in the cavernous space. "You have found the truth." My heart pounded in my chest as he began to explain. The monastery, he revealed, was no ordinary retreat center. It was a gateway to the afterlife, a place where souls came to transition from the world of the living to the realm of the dead. The attendees, including myself, were already dead, victims of various accidents and tragedies. The silent retreat was a way for us to come to terms with our fate, to accept our passing and move on. The chant, he said, was a part of the ritual, a guide for our lost souls. Those who had disappeared were not missing, but had completed their transition, passing through the gateway to the other side. As he spoke, the pieces began to fall into place. The strange sense of peace, the absence of pain, and the surreal quality of the monastery all made sense now. As Brother Michael's words sank in, a vivid memory surged to the forefront of my mind. I remembered the accident, driving home late at night, the rain pounding against my windshield, visibility near zero. I had been tired, too tired to be on the road, but I was desperate to get home. The sudden flash of headlights, the screech of tires, and the jarring impact all played back in my mind with haunting clarity. The car had spun out of control, skidding off the road and into the ravine. There had been a brief moment of excruciating pain, then nothingness. A wave of calm washed over me as I accepted the truth. The fear and confusion melted away, replaced by a profound understanding. I was dead, and this was my passage to the afterlife. Brother Michael extended his hand, and without hesitation, I took it. The other attendees joined us, and together we chanted, our voices merging into a harmonious melody that filled the chamber. The light grew brighter, enveloping us in a warm glow. As we stepped forward, the monastery began to fade, dissolving into the mist. I felt a sense of liberation, a release from the burdens of the past. We were moving on, crossing the threshold into a new existence. The monastery, now just a distant memory, remained a silent sentinel, its secrets hidden from the world of the living. The retreat had served its purpose, guiding lost souls to their final destination. And as I embraced my new reality, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace, knowing that I was finally home. When I first saw the mirror, it captivated me instantly. Browsing through antique shops had always been my escape, a way to connect with the past and unearth hidden treasures. This mirror was tucked away in a dusty corner, its ornate frame tarnished with age but still exuding a mysterious beauty. There was something about it that made me feel like it was calling to me. Ignoring the shopkeeper's strange look and muttered warnings, I bought it on impulse, unable to resist its enigmatic charm. Once I had it home, I hung the mirror in my bedroom, admiring how it added a touch of old-world elegance to the space. For the first few days, everything seemed normal. But then, I started to notice something odd. Whenever I looked into the mirror, I saw my reflection, but there was also another figure standing behind me. This figure looked exactly like me and mimicked my actions perfectly. At first, I thought it was just a trick of the light, or my imagination playing tricks on me. But the more I looked, the more real the figure became. One night, as I stood before the mirror, brushing my hair, I saw the figure again. This time, it wasn't just mimicking my actions. It was trying to tell me something. Its eyes were wide with urgency, its mouth forming silent words that I couldn't understand. A chill ran down my spine, and I backed away from the mirror, trying to shake off the feeling of dread that was creeping over me. A few days later, there was a knock at my door. It was the shopkeeper from the antique store, standing on my doorstep with a worried expression. He explained that he had my address from the purchase record. "I need to talk to you about the mirror," he said, his voice tense. "There's something you need to know." He reluctantly shared the mirror's dark history. It had belonged to a woman who had died under mysterious circumstances. Some said her spirit was trapped in the mirror, trying to prevent others from meeting the same fate. As he spoke, He showed me an old photograph of the mirror's previous owner. My heart skipped a beat when I saw her face. She looked exactly like me. "That's her," the shopkeeper said, noticing my reaction. Her name was Elizabeth. I realized this was why he had looked so strange when I bought the mirror. He must have seen the resemblance between us and been worried about selling it to me. Hearing the name, I felt a strange connection. My parents had told me I was adopted, but they had never mentioned a twin sister. Could it be possible? The pieces started to fall into place. The visions, the sense of familiarity, the figure trying to warn me, all pointed to one chilling conclusion. This realization made me pay closer attention to the scenes I saw in the mirror. I started to take precautions, avoiding situations that seemed to lead to my doom. Each time, my twin's presence grew stronger, her actions more desperate as she fought to save my life. But the more I tried to change my fate, the more I felt like I was being pulled towards it. One particularly vivid vision in the mirror showed me stepping off a curb and being struck by a speeding car. I remembered the exact location and avoided that street for weeks. Another vision in the mirror showed me slipping on a wet floor and hitting my head, so I became overly cautious, always looking down and walking slowly. Despite my efforts, the feeling of impending doom never left me. It was as if fate was determined to catch up with me no matter what I did. One night, the visions reached a climax. I saw myself standing in front of the mirror, just as I was now. But this time, my twin was right behind me, her hand reaching out to touch my shoulder. I felt a cold chill as her fingers brushed my skin, and suddenly, everything went dark. When I woke up, I was lying on the floor, the mirror shattered into 1,000 pieces around me. I felt different, lighter somehow, as if a great weight had been lifted from my shoulders. I knew that my twin had succeeded in changing my fate, that she had sacrificed herself to save me. As I gathered the shattered pieces of the mirror, I noticed a small folded piece of paper tucked behind the frame. With trembling hands, I unfolded it and read the message inside. It was a letter from my twin, written in a delicate, old-fashioned script. "To my dear one, if you are reading this, it means I have succeeded in reaching you. I have watched over you for so long, trying to protect you from the fate that claimed me. Our bond is stronger than death, and I will always be with you. Live your life fully and without fear, for you carry a part of me with you always. With all my love, Elizabeth." Tears streamed down my face as I read the letter. My twin's love and sacrifice had saved my life, and I would honor her memory by living the life she had fought so hard to preserve. The mirror was gone, but the memory of my twin remained. I would always be grateful for her sacrifice, for her love and determination that had saved my life. And even though I would never see her again, I knew that she would always be with me, watching over me from the other side.